to know that you want to learn a bit about Cape gannets. They are an endangered species and they're endemic to Southern Africa, so it's really important that we understand them so that we know how to better manage their populations. So I am based at Dunefields Private Nature Reserve, and that is where we do daily research on Cape gannets. But then somebody asked me if they could come and visit the colony there. So I said, no. We do research from Dunefields, but there's only 6 colonies of Cape gannets in the world. Only 3 in South Africa, and that is Algoa Bay, Saldanha Bay, and Lambert's Bay. So even though I'm going to be presenting on a lot of Cape gannets just outside of Sedgefield, they occur far out at sea, not on land, just to set that straight. So that's what I'll be presenting on today, but first we're going to learn a bit about how their lives are adapted to living in a gannet colony. So Cape gannets are really loving animals. So this is a breeding pair. They are bonded. You can see they're very affectionate. Even vocally, they really talk to one another loudly. They really love one another. But they're also monogamous. And monogamy is good because it means that the pair is really well bonded and connected and committed to one another. But why that is good for the chick is because it improves the chances of survival for the chick. Because if you've got a really connected, committed pair, you're going to want to have your genes be put out there and want your chick to successfully fledge one day. So you're going to try your best. So monogamy is really good for the chick. But before the chick is there, the Cape gannets share some duties. So it's both the male and the female that build the nest. But it's only left to the female to lay the egg, obviously. But once the egg has been laid, you can see it's a perfectly cup-shaped nest. And so once that egg is laid, it's both the male and the female that incubates the egg. So there you can see the webbed feet of the adult going over the egg, protecting it. So it was a warm day that day, and you can tell that because the adult isn't crouching onto the egg. It's just standing a bit above, but still protecting it with the webbed feet. And why the protection of the egg is so important is because, unfortunately, you can see that nest is like really just a small indentation. And so any gannet running past or any predator coming close can snatch that egg. So this is a method of protection. What is strange in that photograph? Exactly. So this was quite special because usually the Cape gannets just lay 1 egg per breeding season. So that means 1 egg per year. That's all. And that's sad because they're already an endangered species and they still just lay 1 egg. So this was really nice for me to see that there's 2 eggs. Although you must remember there's still only 2 parents. So it's difficult for the parents to share that load of feeding 2 chicks and making sure that both fledge successfully. I've also seen not only 2 eggs in one nest, but 2 chicks in a nest as well. So it does happen. They can successfully hatch both, but usually it's just 1. And then the feeding. So how the feeding works is the parent opens its mouth, and the chick then puts its mouth into the parent's mouth, and that's then how the parent regurgitates. And they try to not spill anything because food is very scarce resource. So they try to not spill, but also you don't want to spill because otherwise the kelp gulls, scavengers, are attracted to your nest, which you don't want. But imagine that little head and that little beak going into that mouth of that parent. It is, for me, I think that's very difficult. But they are masters at what they do. Then, going still with parental care, here the adult is shading the chick against the sun. because it really gets hot out there, especially if you have 20,000 nests around you or in 2 hectares. It's hectically warm. So shading really is a great part of the duties of the parents. You can again see the adult is not crouching down on the chick. It was a hot day, and that's also why this picture is so amazing, how it really shows the shadow right on top of the nest. But then when the chick grows older, it's a bit more difficult to shade the chick. So then you can see the adult standing over the chick very awkwardly, trying to do its best. It's difficult, but the parents are super committed. It is really amazing to be at a colony and to watch this, care for their young and care for one another as a pair. It is amazing. So if you ever have the privilege to go to Lambert's Bay, please be sure to visit this colony. Have any of you ever been there?
But there were none there.
Good one.
A few years ago.
Exactly. So there was nothing there when this lady was at Lambert's Bay. And what I mean by that is there was no Cape gannets. But usually there's 16,000 gannets. But then when she was there was nothing. And that is really amazing because there's a story behind that. The gannets have a breeding season. And then after the breeding season, like we're in now, after the season, they go to sea and they just follow the fish. That's what they do. Then when they want to breed again, they go back to land. And they go back to their natal colony. So where they were born, that's where they opt to breed. And so like now, we're seeing a spike in our Cape gannet numbers here in the garden route because the gannets are not spatially constrained. They're not breeding now, so they don't have to care for the chick at the colony. They can fly off and follow the food. And so then the chick grows even bigger and it becomes really fluffy and funky looking. And then when it grows even bigger, it becomes brown, completely brown, and then the feeding gets a bit more difficult. So then you sit with 2 huge beaks, but still at that time they've had thousands and thousands of times to practice, so they really get the job done nicely. Then after 17 weeks of the parents having to raise this chick, the fledglings, they fledge from the nest. But then there's still one hurdle that they have to cross, and that is the fact that they have to fledge from the island. And that's a difficult one. Because remember, they've sat on the nest for 17 weeks, they've not walked an inch, otherwise they get lost. So they just stay on their nest for 17 weeks, and now they're supposed to fly. So the only way where you can try and practice flying while sitting on a nest is by flapping your wings when it's a windy day. Wind stimulates them to flap their wings, and that's when they flap and flap. They're not going anywhere, they just flap and flap, and they're so clever because they know at the age of 17 weeks they're going to have to go. So some of them aggregate here at the edge of the colony and they don't have the confidence or the muscles to go, fly off, so they jump in, which is also fine. They'll quickly get the strength to fly off for longer flight durations. So sometimes they fly for 200 meters and then they rest for an hour and then they try and go again. And that's all fine, they'll build their muscles as they go. But some of them just quickly jump and fly, it's amazing. But so these few here in the corner, they are not so gutsy or not so strong yet, they just jumped in. And it is then there so that is when some seals predate on the fledglings. So some seals have learned to predate on the fledglings. It's not, it is natural, but it's not every seal that does that. It is a learned behavior, and once you know that the gannet has food in the stomach, you do it often if you're a seal. And so you can see it's active hunting, but like I say, it's not normal. It's normal, it's nature. But previously it was thought that it's an uncommon phenomenon, but actually it's becoming more common, and I'll present a bit about that later in the presentation. And so some of them are not so lucky. They end up in the mouths of the seals, but at least there's some luck because these have escaped. So I then have the privilege that while I'm on the island to then go and rehabilitate or stabilize the injured individuals. I'm just glad that they get washed out back onto the island where I can then catch them. And this all being done under permission and permits, and I am qualified to do so. And this is absolutely amazing that while I'm there, I can save a life or two. It's nice that I am being permitted to do that, because otherwise, if my hands were chopped off, even though I'm qualified and capable, then it's horrible to see they struggle and you're not allowed to help. So I'm happy that we do get to help, and as you can see, we help quite a few individuals. And so this is closer to the end of the breeding season. So you can see the colony is very sparse, and it's mostly black individuals. The black ones being the what? The younger ones. So the younger ones are waiting on their nests still. They're waiting for the adults to come and bring them their food. But you can see it's sparse. So most of the fledglings have left already. And then because the fledglings leave, the parents don't have to stay there, so they also leave. Then this is what you described, where this time of year, there's nothing. But still, even if you happen to be in Lambert's Bay at this time of year, I would still recommend going there, because you can still learn so much from the monitors. They're called monitors there at Lambert's Bay. But so you can learn so much from them, because they work there for so many years, working with the gannets, protecting them every day. And it's just amazing, their stories, and to spend some time with them. And also to be at a gannet colony, even if there's nothing, there's still always something to learn about them, even in their absence. After they've left the island, there's no parental care. They have to learn how to feed effectively. So they mustn't only feed enough to survive, they must feed enough to maintain their body weight or even gain a bit of weight. So it's really, really difficult. And I'm just happy to help those in need stranding along our coastline. So this was in February in Wilderness. And this individual also found in Wilderness. And so it's a difficult time of year. When I pick them up, they're so light. I know what a gannet should feel like, but these are just extremely light, and that's because of malnutrition. Or, remember, they're not good at finding food just yet. They have instinct, oh, don't forget that, but it's just difficult for them to maintain their weight. They've got so many things going against them that it is difficult, and I'm just so happy for the rehabilitation centers that can help us rescue and then also rehabilitate these birds so that we can release them again back into the wild. But what makes the Cape gannets different from other seabirds is the fact that they do what we call plunge diving. So they dive with a heck of a speed. They can dive from 30 meters above the water surface, and they go down, and as soon as they are about to hit the water, they close their wings completely, like this one here. That one is still about to dive, or about to hit the water, so the wings are open. And you can see this one here, the bill is already into the water. The bill is the first thing that hits the water. So the bill has the function almost of splitting open the water as you hit with that nail sharp edge. As you hit the water can at least split open, because hitting the water at that speed can be very, very dangerous, even fatal if they don't do it right. And so this is what makes them different from the other seabird species. And this is the skill that they have to master in order to maintain their weight or at least gain a little bit of weight. And then it is after 3 years that they return to the colony for the first time. After they've fledged, they stay at sea for 3 years. They eat, sleep, poop at sea. They don't have to come to land because the only time they have to come to land is to breed. Okay? Otherwise, they can find all their resources out at sea. Everything they need. Their water, their bed, their food, everything's out at sea. Even their mates. But I don't think the mates stay together at sea. When they're not breeding, the parents split, but next season they come back and they look for one another again and they wait for one another at their nest. But it is after 3 years that the fledglings return to the colony for the first time. And people, let me tell you, is that interesting? Because they've stayed at sea for years, not months, years. So their legs are not used to carrying any weight because they're just swimming. And then they're flying and they're swimming. Then they come to the colony and they try to stand and look, they just fall. And then they get up and you can see them thinking and then doing 2 steps and then they're tired and they just fall. But as the season progresses, they say in the first half of the breeding season, you can see, okay, some of them are still struggling, but the latter half of the breeding season, you can see, okay, no, they've gotten used to living on the island again. But why do you think this is a young individual? Yes, the plumage. It's mottled. It's got piano keys. So that's how I can tell that this bird is not sexually mature just yet. It's the age of 3 years. So it's coming back, even though it's not sexually mature, and I said they only come back to land to breed. So what am I telling you? But they come back to practice central place foraging before next year when they actually have a chick. So central place foraging is when you stay at one area, you depart, you go and fish, and you come back to this area. Why that is difficult and why that needs practice is because every time you see your fish but you come back to your colony, you lose contact with where your prey is. And that's the difficult part. For 3 years, you're used to traveling with the fish. Now you're spatially constrained. And that's why at the age of 3, they try and come back to the colony so that next year, when they actually have a chick, they're used to central place foraging. So, to find their partners, we've got more or less on every island, we've got what is called Bachelor's Rock. So that is where we think the magic happens. That is where they find their mates. So here you can see these are on nests. On the rocks, there's no nests because there's not a lot of guano to breed on. So Bachelor's Rock, all the bachelors go there. I don't know if you're actually just coming there for a vantage point to see where your nest is, or if you're really coming to spend some quality time with your neighbors. But it is like 1, 2, 3 and there's the magic and boom, you've got a mate. And it's really a love affair. It's really nice to see them bonding. So they'll start by preening one another and flirting a little bit, and then hopefully next season there's a chick. So what would you guys think? Is this a male or a female? So I want you to vote by show of hands. Who thinks it's a male, a female, or you don't know? So by show of hands, who thinks it's a male? Who thinks it's a female? Who thinks, oh, I don't know. Correct! We don't know. So we really don't know. But with this individual, I can safely assume it's a female. But with science, assuming doesn't work. But let me show you why I think I can assume this is a female. When the parents build their nests, their beaks get muddy like that one. And so with that muddy marks on her neck, they do nape biting while they breeding, while they're copulating. So I can safely assume this is a female because the male with his dirty beak could have grabbed onto her while they were copulating, and that saying to me that this could be a female because the female won't grab onto the male, and especially not onto his neck. But so, like I said, in science, assuming is never good. Never, ever, ever. So I got a permit to pluck 5 feathers from each gannet that I tracked with a GPS. But so from that 5 feathers that I was permitted, I used one to do genetic sexing. So you could also sex them through blood works. You could draw some blood. But I didn't have a permit for that. I had a permit for plucking the feathers. So I went to the laboratory and I genetically sexed them. So by using only one feather, I washed out all the DNA from that feather. And so it was then the liquid DNA that I was left with. So after 8 hours from start to finish in the laboratory, you get your results. Ta-da! How do you read that? But it does make sense if you know what chromosomes the birds have. So the females have XX in humans, but in gannets or birds, it's the other way around. So the female in the birds have different chromosomes, ZW. Whereas the males, they have just one chromosome, ZZ. So, like this one, third from the right, there's 2 bands. So that's the female because it's the Z and the W. Whereas this one here on the left, it's just 1 band, so that tells me that it is a male because it's just ZZ. Cool. So that's how I analyzed the data for my PhD. And I thought that you guys would find that interesting, that even though it's so nice to go to a colony and see all that life, at the end you just sit with this, and this tells you so much, but it all helps you to put the pieces back together so that we can understand the gannets, so that we can also know how to better manage them. Often when I show people this photograph, they tell me, well, how can you say it's an endangered species if there's so many? And yes, I get what you're saying, but the answer is simple. They only breed on 6 islands in the whole world, so whatever you see in front of you is a large proportion of the global Cape gannet population. So this picture was taken at Lambert's Bay, so really do yourselves a favor and visit. It is absolutely amazing. I did my master's degree there, so I was fortunate enough to spend 6 months there. It's a smaller colony, but it is amazing, and it's the only one of the 6 in the world that you can reach on foot and that tourists or the public can actually visit. So with this, I want to ask you, do you think this is cute or awful? Because it doesn't help you ask me, because I just think it's beautiful. But some people, they're like, I don't want to look at that. So by show of hands, who thinks it's cute? Who thinks it's awful? I mean, it's just not nice to look at. Huh? I think it's adorable. And why this was also very special for me is because here you can see the bill of the adult trying to take away the remains of the egg. So it had just hatched. And the head of the gannet is taking the comfort of the foot of the adult. I mean, how cute is that? It's just hatched, it's been cared for or by the adult. Not only, you might disagree with me, like you just confirmed, not only is this cute, Cape gannets are not just cute, they also generate money. So they contribute to our local economy through attracting tourists, thousands and thousands of tourists from all over the world to Lambert's Bay every year. And if the tourists aren't there, if the island is closed for whatever reason, sometimes for maintenance, sometimes for something else, then there can't be any tourists allowed onto the island. Then the locals get angry because then nobody's coming to eat in their restaurants, nobody's coming to sleep in their Airbnbs, and that's because the birds are the attraction to the area. But without them, it doesn't happen. So that just shows us how well the gannets contribute to the local economy. Gannets also contribute to our economy because people catch pelagic boat trips. They love going out on that, and that also generates money. But for the last few years, I've had the privilege to work as a scientific advisor with film companies. And that generates money specifically for conservation as well, and a lot of money. So how amazing is that? So the gannets are not just cute, and they don't just contribute to our economy, they also serve a very good ecological purpose or an ecological role. So for example, if you are a little mussel planted on the rocky shore, you're sessile, meaning you can't go anywhere. We can walk and get our takeaways. The mussels, they can't. They have to sit on the rock and put out their feelers and just filter whatever they can find. And so that's where the gannets help. Because the gannets go out in the deep blue sea, they feed where the mussels can't go and where other rocky shore organisms can't go, and then they come closer. And as they defecate here closer to the shore, that then in the long term or down the food chain helps a lot of the rocky shore organisms. So they're not only cute, they not only contribute to our local economy, but they also play an ecological role, which is very important. But then, even taking all of that, then we endanger their lives in so many ways. So what is this?
Oil.
Oil. Definitely. What is that? Looks like oil. It does look like oil, it really does. But in this photograph, it is rain. It's water. So the colony gets inundated with water if the rainy season overlaps with the breeding season of the gannets. So with climate change, all the patterns are confused and changing. The gannets know when they have to breed, but now the rain is coming and it's overlapping with the gannet breeding season. Now you're sitting with an inundated nest, saturated with water, and you can't tell me that that egg is going to make it. I mean, if the adult doesn't even want to incubate it anymore, then it's goodbye for that egg. So definitely this is indicating climate change. And all of these are my own photographs. So it's just one individual seeing a lot of different threats on the Cape gannets. What is this?
Starvation.
Good one. Starvation. Plastic. Anything else?
Is there something wrong with its neck?
Maybe there's something wrong with its neck or around its neck. What did you say?
Plastic.
Plastic.
Fishing line.
Plastic. Yeah.
Fishing line.
Fishing line.
Bird flu.
Bird flu. And so all good guesses and valid guesses, because this photograph shows diseases. It was, I just said you can't sex the birds, but so I sent that bird to SANPOB, the rehabilitation center in Tableview, and they confirmed that it was the mother, and she died from a liver disease, but it wasn't contagious. It was just her that died. But yeah, her instinct is so strong that she stayed with that chick until the very end, and then eventually she just collapsed and she died. And it was my husband that located this nest in 20,000 nests. He saw this chick is in trouble. So I was planning to just list that as a threat, but sometimes when I say this, people are interested to hear in what happened with the chick. The chick was sent for hand rearing at Sandkop, which is the rehabilitation center in Tableview that I just mentioned. So the chick was hand reared and released successfully, which is absolutely amazing. But now you might wonder, why was he sent to be hand reared if the other parent was still alive, right? Well, it's so demanding on the parent to feed the chick, especially when they get to the age of 10 to 17 weeks. It's really too demanding on one adult. But throwing the demands out the way, that chick is about 2 weeks old. It means predators can still come and get that chick and drag it out of the nest, not fly away with it anymore because it's too heavy, but drag it out the nest, and then the chick is anyway going to die. So yes, it's going to die with just one parent, but keeping it there and then having it be another meal for another predator, we just thought, as we chatted with other scientists and the veterinarians, we collaboratively decided we're going to take this chick. And like I said, it survived and it was released successfully. How amazing. But then this picture just off of Sedgefield Beach, we got a call out, and then my husband had to paddle all the way out a few hundred meters to go and get this gannet that was entangled in fishing line and gut and everything around its beak. And so my husband caught it, he released the gannet from all the plastic, and then he released the gannet, and then he saw he is too weak. It's been too long since that gannet has last had a meal because the mouth was closed, the beak was totally closed. So plastic, definitely a threat. But the biggest threat is overfishing. And even if we don't eat sardines because it doesn't taste nice, or even if we don't eat anchovies because I don't like the texture or the smell or whatever, it doesn't mean our chicken or our cows or our things that we eat, it doesn't mean that they don't eat anchovies and sardines, because fish meal and fish oil and all of that all competes with gannets for food. So this is the main reason for decline for the gannets and many other seabird species. Then what I did my master's degree on is the predation on the gannets. So that is a kelp gull wearing boots, it looks like. It was just stepping in mud, but it's proudly walking around showing everybody the Cape gannet egg that it had stolen. So the kelp gulls also breed on the same island as the gannets, and to get to know that a little bit better, we, together with Mark Brown, Dr. Mark Brown, we published this paper quite recently, and we found that 7 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the afternoon, that is when the gull predations spike on the gannet eggs. But why would that be? Because you can see it's relatively stable during the day, but there's 2 peaks in the day. Why would you think that? Easy. So you're very hungry when you wake up, you go to the gannet colony, you eat, and then before dark you go and eat again. Yes, true. Very true. But what we suggested specifically is because early morning, one of the gannets detach and they go to sea. But remember I told you they love one another. They really greet one another and then they go. Then when they come back, end of the day, they are so vocal with one another, rubbing their necks against one another, bowing to one another, greeting, loving each other. You don't always then keep tabs on your little chick under your, or your little egg under your belly. And so that is why we suggested it's mostly during the early mornings and late afternoons that the predation happens. So at least we know then if we have to implement some management thereof, we know at what times we should specifically reach out. But we also found that in the years when there were fewer gannets in a colony, the gull predation shot up. And that is why the fewer gannets, the more windows of opportunity. Because if there's only a gannet there, there, and there, I can go to each one of them without neighbors attacking me. But if we've a lot of gannets in a small area, I can't even get in without anybody else attacking me. So it really shows that to combat predation, we must just have a growing gannet population, and the main threat, fisheries. So by increasing the gannet's food resources, we're automatically going to combat the gull predation. But then when I showed you this picture earlier, I bet you didn't see those at the back. Those are the seals living on the same island as the gannets, peacefully coexisting. How amazing is that? Nature can coexist, but sometimes if we don't manage things correctly, like on the other island, Malgas Island, which I'll show you, there management is lacking, and there it's havoc. Here, where management is implemented, it is peaceful coexistence. Instinctively, some seals will try and come onto the gannet colony, right? Okay, so there are thousands of seals on the same island, but then this happened in 2005-06 at that colony where I showed you the peaceful coexistence. A rogue seal came onto land and predated on multiple gannets. But if that seal killed a gannet, it didn't necessarily eat it. How can you explain that? So it was killing like 10 and maybe going for that one there to feed on that one. So it was rogue. It was just very strange. And so this was in 2005-06. So from then, Eve Chesley got the contract to go and protect the gannets. And so he implemented the management. And so this is what it looked like when he arrived. There was no gannets. So that previous picture I showed you scared the gannets off so much that they didn't come back. They deserted their breeding attempt. And so for that whole year, 8,000 breeding pairs couldn't even produce one egg. They didn't have the opportunity because they were so scared. And so what happened is they built the dummies, the decoys, the things that look like gannets, and they placed them there, and that then helped them the next season to come back, to think it's okay to come back because there are gannets. Meanwhile, there's none. It's just dummies, but that helped, and that attracted the gannets back to the island. But then, this was my own picture on Malgas Island, again happening while we were making dinner one evening, and there's a seal, and there's a gannet in the mouth. Can you see the gannet? So this happens still today where there's a lack of management. And the management is super easy. It's just the fact that you do your rounds around the island, and you just make sure that every seal is on Malgas Island off the island, no seals allowed on the island. But at Lambert's Bay, where the seals live peacefully with the gannets, you just patrol every hour, making sure all the seals are that side of the virtual line. Cheap. It's easy. It's cheap and easy. You just make sure everybody's that side, and then at night, even when the rangers are sleeping, the seals are so conditioned that every time they come to the gannets, they get harassed. Clap your hands, you scream, and then they go. So it's an easy method. But what I wanted to show you here with the seal biting on the gannet there, I was busy photographing this when my husband was doing the chasing. And so he chased the seal away without scaring the rest of the colony of gannets, obviously. And so the seal left the gannet. And there was the gannet, injured, obviously, on the head. There you can see the wings are drooping. It's totally in shock. And I was fortunate enough to then go and catch it and to help rehabilitate it. And the next day, after I stabilized it, it happily flew off. So how amazing that that gannet didn't only make it from the jaws of a seal, but also survived until the next day and could then be released and be breeding the next season. It was so scared it didn't go back to its nest, but at least the next season, hopefully it would have come back to breed. But just one intervention and it scares thousands of gannets. Just one. Even if the seal didn't touch you, you feel so scared that you don't want to go back. So the same island, Malgas Island, in the year where there were 31,000 breeding gannets, seals were responsible for killing 10,800. Now remember, that's excluding the previous losses to food shortage, excluding the losses to gulls. And when there were only 31,000 breeding pairs, they killed 10,800. That is scary. But so for my master's degree, we looked specifically at the seal predation. And we found that in the years where there were more fish available, the seals preferred the fish over the gannets. How amazing is that? So again, all we have to do is give the gannets more food, and that is automatically more food to the seals as well, and then they rather choose to eat the fish than the gannet fledglings. And so for my PhD, we tracked the gannets. Can you see the GPS tracker on the back? On the lower back. So again, all the research happened under permits, and it had to weigh under a certain amount of grams to be ethical to be on the gannet. And we really got very interesting results. We tracked the gannets at all three colonies in South Africa, but because we're here in this area, I'm going to focus here in the feeding range and the traveling range of the Algoa Bay birds. That is more or less where we are situated, Dunefields Private Nature Reserve, where I do the gannet research every day. And the raw tracks, this is a kernel density graph, but the raw tracks showed that some of the gannets from Bird Island traveled more than 1,000 kilometers in one foraging trip. So this was really interesting, and it immediately showed me that we've been going to be stationed at Dunefields before I got the job. I thought I have to set up a research program. So that is more or less where we are. You can see we're really high up on the dunes, 150 meters above sea level. So that means we really have a great vantage point to be doing our observations from. And we only needed a deck. So we built a deck, and now we have a vantage point to be doing our research from. And our support animal. Yes, our rabbit is leash trained. He's also here with us in Plettenberg Bay this weekend. He's potty trained, so he stays with us in the house. It's easy. But he's leash trained, so he loves going with us on hikes and watching the gannets from afar. We don't have a binocular set for him just yet, but we'll get there. And so with our research taking place here just outside of Sedgefield, it's just after the waves, behind the waves, that we see these rafts of gannets. So you must really keep a lookout. It's difficult when you're on ocean level. We are very high, so it's easier for us. But keep a lookout with a telescope if you have one, or binoculars, as easy as that. But we also see rafts of 400. and that you can easily spot with the eye. But how amazing is that, seeing a raft like that here in the garden route? It is amazing. So how many gannets do you think that is? It is 152. So many gannets in just one raft. It's absolutely amazing. And so you might wonder, well, this logo, obviously she must have designed the logo because she loves gannets. But how cool is that? After just giving one presentation to the owners, they came up with this design. The owner, the lady, she designed it herself. And then she's like, boom, there's your logo for the whole reserve. I'm like, yay, that's amazing. Totally amazing. And I don't know if she knew what she was doing, but in my opinion, that's the fledgling that is brown or dark, and then the adult that is white. How cool is that? But so to understand their behaviors during foraging, we have to understand when they breed, because like I say, they have a dependent chick at home that they have to care for. So when we started at Dunefields in September last year, we had a heck of a lot of gannets. But then, all of a sudden, the next month, in October, it was like magic, and like it's almost as if all of them disappeared. But we have to understand when they breed to understand their foraging behavior. So when they are breeding, it means they're spatially constrained. They're either in Algoa Bay or they're in the West Coast. And so now, a bit earlier, like June, July, the numbers plummeted again. Why is that? June, July, winter rain. But here with us, they don't care if it's winter or not. They're gonna be here all winter. But specifically why they declined all of a sudden now, even coming back in May, being so many here, they left the garden route now in June, July for the sardine run. Now, after the sardine run, again, August, you can see the numbers climbing again. You can clearly see that in their breeding season, they are still here, but not as many in numbers. But it's amazing from this graph to tell, and I promise they were there in December, but they're here all year round. It's not 1 month that they're not here. And this just shows how amazing the garden route is in specifically providing the gannets with place to sleep and place to find food. So the most gannets I've seen in one count was 703. In one count, not in one day, it's not my total. I'm standing here, I'm doing my observations, and I'm counting 703. To me, it's amazing because I love them, and I love seeing them happy, or at least thriving for a moment or two. Because I know all their threats, and seeing them feed here is just, makes me so happy. So they don't only come here and just pass by, they come here to feed. That makes me so happy. That bird right there is a kelp gull, for size reference. That's my picture taken off our deck. We have fish here. It's not that the gannets are doing well. It's not like they have enough food. Their numbers are still plummeting, but that's what I'm saying, sitting on the deck and observing them and seeing them thrive, even for just a moment, is amazing. So I'm so happy to be able to spot them every day. What is this? It's a juvenile. Well done. So, and a raft of juveniles. I mean, like I said previously, the gannets, juveniles, are understudied as to where they go after fledging. And here we are, being able to collect data on the fact that they use the garden route and why it's so important for us to have the juveniles thrive as well is because the only way that a gannet colony can grow and increase in numbers is if we have recruitment. So we have to make sure that it's the juveniles that survive, and that's why this is absolutely amazing for me to see even the juveniles having fun and catching some food here with us. And so just in conclusion, I really hope that this presentation has made you more inspired of the garden route, not only because of the beauty that it holds, but also because it's a year-round feeding ground for the endangered Cape gannets. Thank you.